Welcome back to another episode of Malvo Talks. In this episode, we are going to explore the Nazi influence. And let me just say as a disclaimer, nothing that I am going to say across these next couple of vlogs are supposed to be taken as being necessarily adulatory or praiseworthy of anything that the Third Reich did in terms of its programs and policies, but is to give a clear-cut and even objective perspective on what the overall consequences of their policies, their programs were in terms of the West, the analysis that is given in terms of politics, culture, and social behavior. And the most important thing that we have got to understand about the Nazi influence is that we are not altogether far removed from it, because it's only been 71 years since the collapse of the Third Reich regime, and more importantly, the fact that even though the United States won the military battle, we did not necessarily win the intellectual battle. And the way into this topic, this subject, has to deal with that very important fact. I think it is very interesting, as the historian John Lukács, who made the Third Reich and Hitler part of his concentration professionally, I think it's a very interesting fact that he pointed out not a birthday of Hitler goes by that does not find a fresh bouquet of flowers on the graves of his parents, and that since the end of World War II, Mein Kampf has never been out of print. Now, Mein Kampf is not the most literary or excellent piece of work in the Western canon of great political dissertations. After all, Hitler was not an intellectual. Adolf Eichmann, Heinrich Himmler, and Joseph Goebbels, they were the intellectuals of the Third Reich. But the fact that that book that Hitler penned has never gone out of print shows you that it still strikes a chord in the minds and even in some corridors of Western thought and interests. And this captivation that the Nazis have on the pop culture has to be not only explained, but explored. And that's what I'm going to attempt to do in a small way. Now, to get to the main point of this vlog, I have to first talk about something that Annie Jacobsen pointed out in her book, Operation Paperclip, that during World War II, it was the policy of the United States government not to kill certain kinds of Nazi collaborators. I'll put it that way. That it was the point of our government in its military mission and agenda to find and capture various Nazi scientists and intellectuals so that they could help us in our own geopolitical and military struggles. And the first example of this is a man by the name of Werner von Braun, who was Hitler's rocket scientist and was convicted after the war by the Nuremberg courts, sent to prison. And our government gave him a pardon and asked him to come back and initially head the Advanced Research Projects Agency, which today still exists within the federal bureaucracy as DARPA, the Defense and Advanced Research Projects Agency. And Wernher von Braun said this, that he would come, this was his initial terms, he would come if our government would pardon 12 other Nazis. Well, the government didn't take him up on that offer, and because he proposed that, he was not made the chairman or the head of DARPA, but what he was during the course of his life was a key member, a key participant in this government program. And it's from this government program, and because of his own experimentations and knowledge, that our government was able to provide the rudimentary technology for the internet and GPS tracking, all those gadgets that you have now in your iPhone. The other Nazi who we brought over here for our technological advancement was someone by the name of Kurt Davos, who served during the Kennedy and Johnson administrations, and even further afar, as the head of the NASA program. And it was his insights and his overall leadership that helped us with the whole Apollo missions into space and to the moon. So that, you see, we have a Nazi influence that certainly I did not know about. And if it wasn't for Annie Jacobson's book on this program called, again, Operation Paperclip, many of us would be in the dark. But it must be understood that whatever we have thought about the Nazi influence and the moral consequences of pardoning these people for our own technological supremacy, we must understand that at the time, Roosevelt, Truman, and Eisenhower felt that these things were necessary evils in the battle and competition that we had with the Soviet Union, because let us not forget that the Soviet Union got to Berlin before us and gave their own pardons to various Nazi scientists. So that this intellectual curiosity of the Nazis is the basis for modern technological advances and is also the foundation of the United States technological supremacy over the Western world and the greater world.